fascinating. I didn't actually know this. So, by shifting, doing this kind of idea for this kind of jolted and doing peer-to-peer for everything, and then deciding to go for does it work? I hope not. This is working now. Then going to this kind of only voice, like how can you be convinced that this was actually the right idea?
So what? And it was. Okay, so what we did was that we started to, okay, let's run, have a side project and experiment.
So Skype was a side project.
Started as a side project, but then we realized that this is such a big opportunity. So let's put the original business Jolted in kind of on a side and kind of hibernate a little bit, and because we used the Jolted technology, and then we started to build Skype. It was at one point we realized, okay, we need to focus on this, because you cannot have two projects at the same time to try to be successful. So we moved all our resources and all our focus to Skype. And
so when did you realize that you actually cracked the market?
So, there was a few proof points, which is also something that when you build a business, there are several kind of risks that you have. The first risk is does the product work? Can you actually develop a product that works? And the next one is, can you is the market accepting this product? And the third one is, can you monetize this product? So I remember the first time when I realized that it actually worked really well was that we had one very early build of the Skype kind of kernel, which was then used as like a DOS kind of command. We didn't have any user interface at first. Because we was just experimenting, and you could just type in on the C prompt call and a username. And I had some test calls with some of our engineers, and then I once said, does it work in long distance? So one of my former colleagues, who was also had worked at Tele2, he was based in Singapore. I asked him to test it. So he was in Singapore, I was in London, I think, and we started to just talk about we started to say, like, hello, test, can you hear me, and then half an hour later we were talking about how that person is doing and what did you do last Christmas and things like that. So we realized it actually works, and was a very, very good experience. So that was a great kind of experience, that the product really works. But we had to still overcome that people needed to download the software, and actually they had to go out and buy headsets, because at the time you did not have built-in microphones. So very, very rare to have built-in microphones in your computer. You had speakers, but no microphone. Why would computer manufacturers have microphones in the computers? So we thought that was a big, big barrier. But when we launched, it started to go viral pretty much right away. So then we realized after 1 month we had 1 million users, and we thought, okay, we're off. But we were off in terms of virality, but we did not know if we would be able to make money on it.
Funnily, you did.
We had a business model. We had the plan to launch the Skype Out and Skype In services, a year later, which we did, and that worked fine. But that was still a big risk, because it could have been that most people say that this is fine, but I'm not going to pay anything for it. But that freemium model worked pretty well, where initially maybe 10% of the user base was using it for the paid services.
So we heard from Stefan that we're in big trouble actually in Europe, but the ecosystem is some kind of developing. In what kind of state is the European internet scene right now? So,
well, back in say 10 years ago, it was really bad here in Europe. It was very, very few people did anything with internet. The ones who have been involved in the .com, they had learned, okay, we're going to stay away from this, because everyone lost money and lost faith, and a little bit of I think the culture we have in Europe is that if you go out and you try something and you're going to do something different, if it doesn't work out, people say, well, you failed. That was, don't do it again. So in 2002, 2003 was really, really hard. We did not really have an ecosystem. And while in the US they've had an ecosystem, and when we talk about US, it's actually not, it's not all over US, because they don't have a great ecosystem in Ohio or in South Carolina, but in Silicon Valley they have a fantastic ecosystem. But that's something that's been growing for kind of generations, starting with companies which like HP and Xerox, when the Silicon Valley was built. And then you need to have generations of companies where a founder of a successful company becomes an investor in other companies, and maybe some of the employees in this initial successful company think, okay, I learned a lot from working with this entrepreneur who was the founder of this company. Now maybe I will go out and try my wings and start a company. And the founder who made some money from his company, he may invest. And the next thing is that you had Stanford and Berkeley, which become recruiting grounds from these companies. And so and then that goes on, and then you have Amazon and Yahoo and eBay, and then you have Google, then you have Facebook and Twitter, and now you have a lot of these companies. That's an ecosystem that which has been growing for many years. And Lars, you also have seen from when you started Xing compared to now, it's so much better. We have a lot of success stories in Europe, a lot of very successful companies. And while the statistic we show says that, yeah, we're not, we're still behind a lot, but it's getting better. And I think we need to have also a little bit of patience, is that over time, I think that the tech industry in Europe is getting better and better and better. Otherwise, I wouldn't be, spending my time trying to invest in companies and try to find good companies that I can help to grow.
So where would you today start your company?
I think that it becomes less important today where you start your company. It's pretty much like if you are at a place, if you're in Munich and you have other, good co-founders, there's no reason why you should kind of move from Munich to go somewhere else. 10 years ago, I was, you probably would have been better off just going to Silicon Valley to start your company. Today, it's not such a, sometimes it may be a good thing to do, but I think it's not necessarily an advantage, because you have access to capital in Europe today, and there's certainly a lot of good engineers and good marketing people, good product design people.
I see the minister smiling, so more tax money in Munich here. So we talked a lot about emerging markets at DLD conference, and we see that there is a massive way to entrepreneurs. You're also investing in Brazil. Shouldn't we go to Brazil where the sun is?
It's a good place to go to. I think there is certainly a lot of opportunities in emerging markets. So coming back to it's like should we go to one place or the other? I think that actually after graduating you should really think about going somewhere in another place than you've been growing up and where you've been studying. Do that for a year or 2 years. Go and work somewhere. Go to Brazil, go to Turkey, because that's a booming market. It's closer. It's also nice and sunny. But Brazil is fantastic. If I was 21 years old, I would probably go there, not for the rest of my life, but I would go there for for a year or so and learn. Go to Asia, and because the world market is today much more of a global market, and if you go out and live in a foreign country for some time, you learn a lot about that market and also about how other culture works, and then you're going to be better when you come back here or wherever you go, when you develop products and services and marketing these services, to understand different marketing cultures.
And tech companies definitely changed the way we live, how we communicate. Tech actually changes everything. Does tech companies have a new responsibility also for society?
Well, last year was very, very interesting, because we saw for the first time in a massive way how the technology and it could really have an impact in shifting powers. We saw that the Arab Spring, I don't think would not have happened if we wouldn't have the internet and the mobile phones, because it was a way for people who were suppressed by a regime to communicate with each other and realize that they could actually all stand up together against the regime, and that was a very, very powerful thing. We also have things like which not necessarily very good things, like we had the riots in London last year, which was to some extent facilitated by instant messaging. And was that a good thing or bad thing? I think it was a bad thing personally. But so the internet itself and all the services, social networks and Twittering and Skype has also to some extent enabling people to communicate, and that's in a whole different way that they could do before, which means that the ones who used to have powers in communications, whether those were large publishers, newspapers, governments, their power is less today compared to the power that sits with the people in terms of communication. And that, of course, then I don't know what impact it has for people like us who are working with tech companies, because we are very focused on developing the best possible products, investing in the best possible products and making these products successful. And I would think that by far the majority, pretty much most entrepreneurs, most investors are doing these things in very, very good faith. Of course, there's always a few rogue individuals who are taking advantage of this, but we've also seen that in the banking industry as well. So I think it means that we need to probably also ask ourselves the question is like, what kind of what are the considerations that we need to have? Is there things that we need to think about? Is there some regulation, or is it competition that's going to just make things good, or is it making sure that we have more open markets, or is it more regulations? I think these are things that we need to discuss and have a dialogue about, and that's also what's great to there's a lot of leaders in the industry we've been gathering here at the DLD. That's a good forum to meet and to discuss these things.
So what only a few people know about you, that you're also big in sailing, and you're probably one of the most successful sailors and yacht owners in the world. You won twice the Rolex Cup. So what kind of things you learned at business which you apply in sailing, and what are the things you learned at sailing which can be applied to business?
So I think in that way sailing is very similar to any kind of sports, at least a team sport. So I think a few things is like it's when you get into something and to me starting a company is a competition. It's a game, and I'm competing against other entrepreneurs to be more successful, to be better. And I think that's something that is something that drives a lot of entrepreneurs, that you're driven by to change something, but also to compete. And how you do that is not by necessarily being the best yourself, but one thing I realized building my businesses, for me to be successful is to be convinced about something myself, so I can evangelize and get other people with me, but also make sure I have the best possible people around me. So I can guarantee you that in all the companies I've been working with, there's been always better engineers, better product designers, better marketing people, better managers, and probably better strategists than me. But maybe I have a good ability sometimes to get the right people, but also not be afraid of hiring people that are much better than yourself. And I think people who are maybe insecure in themselves and making sure that they want to be better than the people they hire, then they're going to have not very successful companies. And it goes very much the same thing with a team. Always make sure that you have people around you that make you look good, and work as a team. And also with one thing we always did with the companies I've been working with is like you want to win as a team, and also you want kind of if you fail, you want to the team should be there and say, okay, that's fine, we can learn from it. So I think that's very much similar to the approach I've had with sailing.
So before I open up to you guys, and so please prepare now questions for Niklas. Like, what are the 3 books you would recommend for us to read to be as successful as you are?
I don't know, because
you don't read?
No, I do read, but I don't read the kind of the textbooks about how to start a company and to how to do digital marketing. so much actually, because I think if you're very much into it, yourself, then you may read these things, say, yeah, that verifies what you think. So I'm not. It's hard to kind of look at some specific books. I think it's actually interesting to read kind of biographies of successful people and how they went through their career and the experiences that they had is sometimes more maybe interesting than a textbook how to do digital marketing and
but you're not yet writing yours, huh?
No, I'm not good at writing.
So questions from you. You should use the microphone, which is somewhere. So who wants to be first, or I take it, or I choose someone?
Does this work? Super. Hi, Lars. It's nice to meet you. I am very sorry about this, but I was one of those companies at a global fund that did reject Kazaa in 2000. I'm sorry about that. My question for you is atomic related. What is your sweet spot in terms of tech? Are there any things that you're specifically looking at? And what kind of a team, where does a team need to be to basically get supported by Atomico? And how involved do you get with these companies?
So we are looking for companies in the primarily consumer internet space. So companies doing online services that can scale and become potentially a winner or a leader in its category. And we are looking at companies which can be international companies. So if you say in most categories, there's certain sectors that you can be very successful by being like a strong player in one country, like e-commerce, for example, is something that works very well country by country. But we would prefer to want to see companies which want to be international companies, and that's also something that I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of European companies have and entrepreneurs is that they're looking very much at their home markets rather than thinking about the global markets. And I think Germany is one of the countries which have a lot of that, but it's also a very big economy, a big market. So you can actually be quite successful, as a company, but being successful only in Germany. So that's some of the statistics we see there, that there's no German companies in the top 150 domains. It's also because by that limiting factor, most most companies here are focusing only on the German market. But I would encourage companies to say, we start here, but then we're going to go out and be successful internationally. So we're looking then also at companies primarily which have come a little bit in their journey, which are thinking about this international expansion, because that's where we can really help them. So we have people in Brazil, in China, in Turkey, and in Japan. So we can help companies with international expansion, but it doesn't make sense to do international expansion before you've proven your product. So it's kind of when something that started to grow, that's when we can come in and be helpful.